Bokeh photography. Before I begin, last week I asked you to post your best long exposure photos using the hashtag #JoshKatzPhotos, and here are some of my favorites. Great job to everyone, you guys killed it. And now let's begin the tutorial. A few things to establish first. One, what is bokeh photography? Bokeh is the effect of when light is out of focus in your shot, and it actually is always in the shape of your aperture ring, so it might be a hexagon or a circle. It always looks super, super cool. Two, how do you pronounce bokeh? It's pronounced bow, like bow and arrow, and ke as in kettle. Three, what do you have to shoot to get this effect? You can shoot just about anything. I like going outside and shooting city lights because they're always cool and different colored. You really just need like a concentration of a number of lights because just one light won't look that cool. You can also do indoor stuff. Christmas lights make for a really awesome bokeh effect, so really just work with what you've got, equipment and strategy. To get a stark bokeh effect, you're going to want to use a lens with the biggest aperture or the lowest aperture number possible. Now, just a reminder, aperture is what lets in light to the camera and it's a hole. So when people say the biggest aperture, they're actually meaning they make the hole as big as possible, which is the smallest aperture number. I know that can be confusing, but know that they're the same thing. The lens I like to use for bokeh is this 50mm 1.8 from Canon. It's a super cheap lens for only $100, and it's also great for portraits, so if you want to get that, I'm going to put a link down below to it. Really great lens. Think about the lights that you're getting the effect from and how you want to shoot them. Maybe you want those to be the primary photo with nothing else in it, in which case you just unfocus the lens until you get the right effect that you want, or maybe you want to focus on something in the foreground, kind of like what I did with this cup, and I focused on that and then got the bokeh effect in the background. It really just depends on what you want to shoot and how you want it to look. All lenses have a minimum focus distance, which is how close the subject can get to your lens and still remain in focus. I'm shooting this with my Canon 24-105 lens, and it's currently at its minimum focusing point. Notice if my hand gets any closer, now it's out of focus. Now the closer you are to that minimum focusing point, the stronger the bokeh effect you're gonna get, which is good to keep in mind because maybe you want a huge bokeh effect with massive circles, or maybe you want a more subtle bokeh effect with just smaller circles. Now for the actual shooting. If you're still feeling a little uncomfortable with your camera, I highly recommend staying in aperture priority mode because aperture is the most important part of this photo. If you're feeling a little more ambitious, I recommend manning up and going to full manual mode, and I will walk you through how to do that. If you're shooting in full manual, I want to remind you that aperture, shutter speed, and ISO all counterbalance each other, and for this shot, aperture is the most important because that's what makes for the bokeh effect. With this lens, we're going to bring it down to the minimum aperture at f1.8 for that strong bokeh effect, but if your lens can't go as low as 1.8, fear not, you can still get an awesome effect with, say, f3.5. Now that your aperture is set, you have to decide between setting your shutter speed or your ISO next, and to do this, you're going to have to think about what you're shooting. If you're shooting a car, something that's moving, and you want it to be frozen, you're going to need a faster shutter speed, in which case I'd recommend, say, 1/250th of a second. And to make up for that fast shutter speed, you're going to need a higher ISO. Something else to consider is if you have a tripod, you can really mess with shutter speed and have it be as low as 20 seconds or as fast as 1/250th or 1/800th, whatever. But if you don't have a tripod, you're going to need a faster shutter speed so it's not shaky. I recommend just having a tripod so you have full flexibility for the shot, but if you don't, just use a faster shutter speed. If you're looking for a tripod recommendation, I'm going to put a link down below to the tripod I use, which I love. It's great for photos. Now for my shot, I wanted the camera to be so low to the ground that I couldn't even use a tripod. And remember, when you don't have a tripod, you can always rely on the trusty phone, wallet, shoe combination, which is exactly as I did. Moving on, maybe shutter speed isn't important because your object is completely stationary, in which case I'd set my ISO next. So I'd set it to the minimum ISO, probably ISO 100, which will minimize graininess because the higher the ISO, the more grain you're going to get. And then I'd set my shutter speed accordingly. Because you have such a low ISO, you're going to have a slower shutter speed to make up for that lack of lighting. I ended up shooting this little cup I found in Alphabet City when I was walking around, just because, first of all, it had a piece of gum stuck to the top of it, then it was filled with this strange greenish liquid that looked bizarre. I have no idea what it was. And lastly, because the car's headlights were shining through the translucent cup, and I thought that looked really awesome. So here are my final shots that I ended up with. Now, I should remind you guys that bokeh isn't that hard of an effect to get. It really just takes the right lens and an out of focus shot, which is why it really is up to you to make sure you have an interesting composition to make for a cool shot. Since it was so awesome seeing all the long exposure photos you guys posted on Instagram after seeing my tutorial, I really want to urge you guys to do this again with your best bokeh photos. So I want you to tag me at Josh Katz and use the hashtag JoshKatzPhotos. I think the hashtag got over 100 posts last week, which is so incredible that you guys are trying out these new photo techniques and being very successful. So for this, I'm going to make it a little bit more interesting. The best photo is going to get a shout out on Instagram. I'm going to repost it and tag you. And I'm also going to mention it in the next photo tutorial I do. So try your best, post your awesome photos, and I cannot wait to see them. Two little things. One, don't tag me in any of those old stale photos you posted on Instagram 8 months ago. I want new photos taken and posted this week, fresh off the printing press. And two, for extra points, someone tried doing some long exposure bokeh photography using both of these two tutorials I made. Now I should point out, I've never been able to have a really cool looking long exposure bokeh photo. I've tried, but it's a really hard thing. Maybe you guys are better photographers than me, so I look forward to seeing those of you who try. If you haven't seen my long exposure photo tutorial yet, I'll put a link over here. And if you want to see a photo tutorial I haven't made yet, leave a comment down below on what you want to see it of, because I need suggestions, and I'm guessing I haven't made what you want to see it because I've only made 2 of these. Last but not least, also let me know in the comments what you thought of this tutorial. If I was moving too fast, too slow, if I should have danced more or showed more pictures. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you eventually. Also, thank you for dealing with my really crazy hand movements.
Yes.